Hey there. This is Jen T. Grace and Madame
Ally Berthium.
And we are here for our first Unscripted with Ally and Jen. And you are on I'll say the tail end of bronchitis because I feel like that's being optimistic. But the show must go on, and here we are.
Yes, so folks, I apologize. We've got a messy at-home background happening here. In addition to my bronchitis, I have a kiddo that's at home sick. So, but you know what? We've been planning Unscripted with Ally and Jen for months. You've all probably only known about it for about a month because that's when we started to promote. But Jen and I have been working behind the scenes a long time now to bring this to you. So we're excited. Jen, how did Unscripted with Ally and Jen become a thing?
I love it. I love it. You know what's funny is that it's called Unscripted, and I feel like this is very much the definition of unscripted, where there's children, pets, messes in the distance. Like it's real life and it's honest. I think that's what's important here. But so I don't know exactly when your sham scams and shady shit panel was. When was that last year?
I want to say that might have been September of 23.
Okay,
Yeah.
so fall of last year, you had the brilliant idea of grabbing a whole bunch of publishing professionals together to do a panel that basically talked about the lack of honesty and integrity in the publishing industry, and then highlighting those of us that are operating with honesty, integrity, and being transparent professionals. And so we had that. I had so much fun, and I got to meet some cool new people. And I know that we have the replay of that in the show notes for our new Unscripted with Ally and Jen. That is a monthly show. I don't know what we'll call it. It's also talk show
with awesomeness.
Yes, we're a work in progress still here, obviously. But I came to you and I was like, I want to do more of this. I don't know what this looks like. And we just started brainstorming. And I was like, I kind of see it as like an ESPN around the horn thing where we're just kind of like talking about what's happening in the industry, what some, tips and tools are that are relevant to authors and people who are looking to figure out what publishing paths make sense to them or how to get their books written and all of the kind of like glorious messiness in between. And so we just started brainstorming. And as you mentioned already, over the last couple of months, we kind of came up with what we believe is a format that makes sense. However, as folks are watching this, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube specifically. But if anyone has thoughts or questions or topics that I think that, that you're like, hey, it'd be nice to hear from two folks who have integrity and might have opinions on this. Because I know for me, I have no shortage of opinions, and I don't want to speak for you, but I feel like I can. So that's what.
No, we definitely, there's an alignment there. Yeah, folks, we want to give you the dish, the dirt, the deets on publishing and writing books and all those things. And we're here really to serve. So while we've got show segments out the wazoo that we could do and things that we could discuss, we really want it to be about what you need on your journey to bringing that book all the way to the marketplace. And actually, one of my favorite things about how Unscripted came to be was when we were trying to figure out like a logo and how to like brand it to both of our businesses, and then found out that our color palettes, like in our style guides, were like in the same Pantone spectrum, like nearly identical. I think there was only like one that was kind of like off from the other, like just like a touch. So that's been really fun to see not only how we align, within the industry, but also just kind of like in terms of branding and messaging, and obviously flair for the honesty and straightforwardness and shoot from the hip that we are totally being real about in this show all about publishing.
Yeah, I love the flair for the honesty, because I feel like and it's not to say that there aren't honest people in this industry, because there's plenty of us. It's just, I think the problem is that we are drowned out by those who are dishonest. And so I feel like for me, I know I have a blunt delivery of things. I know that also is how you roll. And I think that's how it was just kind of like an instant connection when we first started talking. It was like an immediate connection over just the directness, and I think a little bit of entertainment value, if I'm being honest. But then, beyond that, just both knowing that we do have the same desire to educate people, educate first-time authors specifically, of just how to really kind of navigate this space from kind of start to finish. So I am excited that this is our kickoff episode here. And as I mentioned, we will be doing this monthly. So we were happy to take in questions and comments and thoughts that people have. And I know that we're already seeing some comments from LinkedIn, which is fantastic. So
Yeah. So Esther, thanks for being with us live. We'll get to your question in just 1 second. So one of the things about today and about where we're starting, right? Why this is called integrity and transparency. This is going to be important for Jen and I, no matter what conversation we are having and whatever the theme or topic is for Unscripted. But the reason that we're starting here is because this was one of the pieces that we connected on just individually when we first kind of became referral partners. And it's definitely what we focused on a lot in that panel that we referred to in September. But it's something that constantly comes up, in each of our line of work. You're a publisher, I'm a book coach and ghostwriter. But there's a lot of horror stories that come across, each of our desks when we're talking to first-time authors, about working with people or finding people who are really wanting to take them for everything they're worth, rather than really be there for them as a partner. But before we dive into that, I think integrity and transparency also came up for Jen and I personally when in the last calendar year, she and I more or less were writing the exact same book. So I'm co-authoring with Bridget McGowan Hawkins, another publisher, a book called Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. And Jen, your title, please.
Is Publish Your Purpose, a step-by-step guide to write, publish, and grow your big idea.
And basically, both of these are incredible desk references for the aspiring author to know what they're doing before they get going and to not have to make first-time author mistakes. Mm-hmm. And Jen, when you were developing your manuscript and you got to the point of needing endorsers for the cover, you came to me and asked me if I would read it, and my heart sunk. One, because I wanted to ask Jen to read my book when it came time to endorsing, except she was like 6 months ahead of where I was in the development process. And so really I came to this crossroads and I said, gosh, I really want to read Jen's book, but this would be out of integrity for me to read Jen's book, know what's in Jen's book, and then not only have it cloud my judgment of Jen's book just by the sheer nature of like the fact that we're writing the same thing, but also I didn't want to read Jen's book and have the material she was writing sway what I was doing in the development of my book, right? Because we were still finalizing what was going in. We were still finalizing the table of contents. So it was not going to be of service to Jen or myself to have agreed to endorse. And I remember feeling really nervous about writing that email, even though it was like totally the right thing to do. But like, dear Jen, I am writing the same book you are as such. But Jen, I remember your response back was incredible. It was just like, thank you. Thank you for having integrity and saying no. And I think what's really awesome is that, like, despite the fact we have each written a book, that really tackles the same subject in probably very similar ways, frankness, straightforwardness, all the things we already, said that we align on, that we still decided to come together for Unscripted and do this anyway, right? Like showing that there is space for multiple people to play and operate within the industry, have a very similar approach, and yet have it be collaborative and not competitive.
Yeah. It should not be rocket science is how I see it. Like, why can we not be partnering more together? And when I did get your email back, I was just so like squealed with delight because I'm like, oh my God, I knew I loved her already. And this is exactly why, because we are so aligned from just a value standpoint. And I think that is so important. And honestly, and I know you and I have talked about this offline, but the amount of stories that need to be told, the amount of authors that need to be served, you or I could never handle all of it. So if we are in an abundant mindset where it's like, I will collaborate with anybody that is operating from a place of integrity, because that is my whole goal, is to just really help authors. It's your goal is to help authors. We're serving them in slightly different ways, but yes, we wrote very, very, very similar books. And that's not in competition with each other. And I think that that's like really important for other people to see, because I think as authors, and I'm curious your experience with your authors, but I think sometimes authors come to the table and all of a sudden they have like the imposter syndrome that sneaks in because they're like, I'm writing a book similar to one that you already published or one that you already wrote, and it's like, No, no, no. That is actually a huge blessing, because now you have more people that you can collaborate with, as long as everyone's coming to it from an abundance standpoint versus scarcity and like trying to hoard resources.
Yeah, so for me, when it comes to that idea of like, oh, there's something similar already out there. One, I feel like if there's something similar out there, that means other people want that content. They want that arena of thought leadership or whatever it is, right? Other thing that I think is great about books that are similar, that are already out there, you can study them. Go see what that author did. Go follow them. Like, not to parrot or plagiarize what they have done, but to take what you think they've done well and to emulate it, right? To see what has been successful for them and figure out what's your way of doing that same thing that might be successful for you. And also, who knows, maybe they could be an endorser. Maybe they could be your back cover blurb because those books are similar. And the other thing too, right, that's really great about similar books, right, is in the industry world, we would call those comparables, right? Comparable titles. You need to know what else is out there in order to know how your book stacks against it, right? Here are the similarities, but here's also what sets my book apart from this other thing that already exists out there. So truthfully, these are good things. These are helpful things. And also, I hate to break it to you folks, there are no more original ideas. Not really. All the stories, all the things have been done. Like, it's 2024. The world has been around a long time, and we've been telling stories since we could draw drawings on the cave walls. So, like, it's not so much about having to be 100% original as it is about having to find your unique way of saying the thing in a new way that people make it seem like it's a new idea, right? And I think, to go back to the, like, there's so many people and we can't serve them all. Not only can we not serve them all, right? We don't want to serve them all. Like, not everybody who comes to me is right for me. And not everybody who goes to you is right for you. And even when I'm referring clients, when we're done with the manuscript and I'm introducing them to publishers, I will always introduce them to like 3 or 4 different people, because I like all 3 or 4 of those people, but not all 3 or 4 of those people are right for the client. The client has to decide who's right for them, energetically, personally, values wise, who shows up to the call ready to be their partner. I mean, so many different things that come into this. Do you want to piggyback off of that, Jen? Because I did have a thought about how this segues to Esther's question.
Oh, yes. The only thing I'll add to it, and then we'll segue to Esther, is I think you are doing such a service for those that you work with by making those strategic introductions and also being on those calls too, right? Because you have certainly introduced me to some of your people. We have gotten on calls together and we can decide collectively, because I feel like from your standpoint of being a book coach and a ghostwriter, and then my standpoint as a publisher, all of this is such an intimate process. And I think that a lot of times, people are kind of coming to it of like, all right, it's very, I was gonna say not so practical, but just this is what happens. This like very like rote and not a lot of room for emotion. But you are putting your story out there, and emotion is inherently tied to that story, whether it's a memoir or whether it's a business book. I don't think it matters. There's still emotion tied to it. So I think it's just really important from a, finding the right fit from a writing or publishing standpoint, either direction, both directions. Finding that right energetic vibe is so important. And I love that you are like, here's my person, and I'm going to hold their hand. I'm going to hold their hand and talk to you at the same time. Like, it's a beautiful thing, because I don't think everyone does that.
I was just going to say that. I mean, I don't know a lot of other book coaches' processes intimately, but I also, nobody that I've seen so far has like openly said like, oh yeah, and when we're done with the manuscript, I go and facilitate conversations with the publishers. Like, but for me, when I've worked with a client for 12 plus months, like, and I'm as invested as they are where that manuscript gets, like, the last thing I want is for them to end up with the wrong publisher after all of that hard work and energy. And something that I've appreciated about you, Jen, and the calls that we've had, is that, well, 2 things. One, if something doesn't quite work out, you don't hold it personally, right? Like, you're not personally upset with me that my client didn't choose you. But 2, when you recognize you're not the right fit for them, you've done introductions to other publishers as alternatives. And again, I think that that's super unique, again, from that collaborative spirit of like, hey, your book deserves to be told. Maybe I'm not the person, but there's somebody else out there that's right for you. And I think that that's great. So, all right, Esther, our love fest is over. You want to know about advice on curating an anthology. And where I think that this fits into today's conversation is that, to me, an anthology, obviously it's a curation of several voices. And so to me, one of the very important things of that is a clearly defined focus and thread that runs through that entire anthology. Because I've seen a lot of curated projects with multi-authors that are actually done pretty poorly because the thematic thread of what those authors are talking about is so all over the place that you can't figure out why all of these people are in this book together. So I think that you really need a clearly defined and focused, like, what is this anthology actually about? And then beyond that, a group of writers that are like-minded energetically in terms of their values, right? Because that is going to not only, I think, show through the writing and how things collect and get compiled together, but on the back end, meetings, processes, systems, deadlines, communication. Like, can you imagine if you had 10 people who are kind of like, not connected to one another in any way, shape, or form, and you're trying to manage all of these authors' expectations, personality traits, whatever it is. So those are my top two that are coming to mind right now. Jen, what do you think?
There's so many things. I think you really just covered the content side of this really well, because Esther threw in another question, which I love, loving your vibe, Esther, of, I'm sure that's easy to answer, so no pressure. Crowdfunding for anthologies. So, in creating budgets. And so I think that's budgeting is a whole can of worms. I actually have an entire chapter about publishing cost in my book. So if you are interested, you can check it out. It's ebook, audio, paperback, all of the ways. But if you also email me, I'm happy to provide that sample chapter. But point being is, when we think about crowdfunding, I would say finding the right platform to do it on. So people do trust websites like Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I always kind of stay with those rather than like a GoFundMe, which feels more kind of charitable type of things, like people with medical problems and fires and things like that. Whereas I think Indiegogo and Kickstarter kind of give you more of a place from more of a business standpoint, or like a product standpoint. So I would, you're almost like putting the cart before the horse, because you have to figure out what your budget is. You got to figure out like how to define what your budget looks like, which means you got to figure out how you want to publish it. So if you are going to self-publish it, that's going to be one type of budget. If you are going to work with a hybrid publisher, that's going to be another type of budget. So I think that's kind of an important thing to start. And, actually, it's also on the PYP website. So if you go to publisherpurpose.com, it's somewhere on the right-hand side. There's a navigation bar. It'll say book cost blueprint. You can go download that. And it shows kind of like what you should pay for editing, what should you pay for a cover design. If you can just nail down those big buckets and do the project management on your own, which I find to be an extraordinarily heavy lift. But if it's a skill set that you have, and you're going to be the one that's coordinating all these different writers and all these different voices, et cetera, then you can come up with a pretty solid budget for yourself. And then the decision is, all right, I have these 12 people who are going to contribute to this anthology. Do you want to divide the expense between the 13 of you total? That's going to be the question. Or is it something that you are the one that is spearheading? It's going to be your name on the cover, and then those expenses are yours. And I have like 100 other things I could say about this, but I'll just try to leave it there as something that's helpful and actionable.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I think one of the biggest pieces is, like, are people paying you to be in the anthology, or are you fronting the costs because your name gets to be the frontliner on the cover, right, as the main editor and the compiler. So yeah. And then crowdfunding, my only other thing about crowdfunding is when you're looking at Kickstarter or Indiegogo, is to know whether or not you have to actually meet your fundraising goal in order to get any of the money, or is it like, what's the word? What are the phrase I'm looking for? Like winner takes all. If you say that you want a $3,500 budget, but you only raised $2,500, you might not actually get any of what you raised, because you actually have to reach your goal first in order for you to see any of the money. So yeah, there's a number of things that can be tricky there. Although one would think that if you've got multiple contributors who all believe in the project, they'd all be promoting the Kickstarter or Indiegogo, crowdfunding campaign, and that would help generate more traffic and more dollars. So Yeah, lots of things. But to go back to our topic, right? Integrity and transparency. I think, Esther, the big thing is once you have your focused plan in place, is then being transparent and honest and upfront about exactly how this project is going to work when it comes to you inviting those contributors in. I think that goes a long way. Because like I said, I've seen some kind of horror compilations where authors are spending thousands to be published in, a multi-author volume, and there's no focus, there's no defined audience, and they get very little from the amount that they put in. And the amounts sometimes are crazy to me. This is exactly one of my things about integrity and transparency, is they could be putting $3,500 into one chapter of an anthology. And when I think about how far $3,500 might get you as a self-published author, when you can have a whole book with your whole name and all of the word real estate is yours, to me, it's like, they've gotten sucked into the idea of dipping their toe into publishing, but maybe not for all of the right reasons, if they're just being taken advantage of on the other side. So I actually think that that's a great segue into like tips and tricks. Like, what should our people be really thinking about when it comes to this idea of integrity and transparency as they're shopping around and like writing their books?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect segue. And I'm just going to provide another resource. And we kind of said this at the start, like we are both so focused on education and helping people that the Publisher Purpose website is just filled with information they're downloadable and easy to kind of wrap your head around. If you are trying to find, whether it's a publisher or even a self-publishing service provider, I have a blueprint on our website that's the 9 questions to ask a publisher. It's available. You can go download the PDF, and it answers kind of what we're talking about here, where it's what are the right questions to ask somebody that you're going to collaborate with to know if your values are going to be aligned. I think the first one on the list is, what are your values? Or, do you have minimum orders I have to place? Like really just kind of thinking of some of these I find to be kind of like blind spots for folks, right? Where it's, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what to ask. And especially as a first-time author, both from trying to figure out how to work with somebody from writing and to also what do we do with publishing? There's a lot that is hard to find, because you go to Google and you type in, how do I find a publisher? That is going to yield 4 million results, of which the first 10 pages are going to be mostly unhelpful or conflicting information, which I find to be the most frustrating for folks, is just the conflicting information. Quickly, I see, Esther, that you said vanity ? I assume you're asking us to speak to vanity publishing potentially. Vanity publishers, this is actually in that 9 questions blueprint that I mentioned. Go any company that you are looking to work with, go to Google, type in their name, plus scam, plus vanity, plus lawsuit, anything like that. It will bring up, I know, Ally, you laugh, but I'm right? Like, just because there are class action lawsuits all over the place in this industry. If you just lift up the cover for a second, there's lawsuits everywhere where authors are suing publishers because of not getting what they were supposed to get, or like a bait and switch type of scenario. So vanity publishers, I find, are very easy to spot, but you just have to go to the Better Business Bureau. If there's complaints there, it's usually a red flag. So yeah, I know I'm all over the place in answering this, but as you soon will tune in, you will see that that's how we both roll.
But I want to jump on the other side of this. So you get those 9 questions, which are beautiful, right? And you bring those to these conversations. But what I want to also encourage you all to be doing is really doing a body scan as they're answering those questions, and writing down immediately, what's happening. And your gut is often accurate. If something doesn't feel right, then there's probably something that's off, even if it's just like not a good match. Maybe it's not that they're operating out of integrity. Maybe it's just that they're not perfect for you. But like, you should really be just kind of like checking in with yourself and trusting that, that your inner guidance system has an idea of like where to go and which direction. And one way that I do this is, after I facilitate these mediations or these calls between clients and publishers, is immediately when we're off the phone, I Voxer them and I say, give me your immediate download right now. Like, I don't let them wait. I don't let them process. Yeah. I want the immediate gut reaction first, right? let's get it out there, because I know that they might not be going back and sitting down and writing down all of those initial reactions. But sometimes those initial reactions are like exactly what you need to be listening to, especially as a first time author. So that's, that would be one piece of advice that kind of couples or pairs with, knowing those questions. And then another one, is comparison shop. All right. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many people I feel like I've talked to who they're like, oh, well, you're like the first person I've talked to and you seem cool. So I'm like, like, I think I'm pretty cool too. I'm glad that you recognize that. However, like, I am one person with one style, right? And I mean, the other thing too that's kind of laughable at times is like they might be coming to me and they are not at all within the usual genre that like I write in. So, I've had calls with people who want to do the multi-author volumes in like, local chamber of commerce space. And I'm like, no. Or, they'll come and they might want to work on fiction. That's usually a no for me too. Depending on the scenario. If it's fiction that's based off of real life events, then we're hovering pretty close to memoir. I might consider it if they're the right client and I feel like we're aligned. But if they're just like flat out coming to me wanting me to write them a novel as a ghostwriter or coach them through that, like, I don't know. Like, do I feel like I'm skilled enough to do that? Would that be in integrity for me to move forward? And I would push on my clients the same way when shopping publishers. Like, this is exactly why I don't give them just one person that I think is the best fit. I give them 3 or 4. I will tell them out of that 3 or 4 which one I think they're going to like the most based on what I know about them. But like, would we go and try just one car and then just like take it off the lot? Or, would we get a medical diagnosis, maybe a bad one, and then say, okay, well, they're a doctor, they must know. Like, no. Like, when we care about our health, like, we go and we get a second opinion, right? So, publishing is no exception. It's big bucks. Like, so do yourself the favor and research. Like, really, really vet your options.
I could not agree more. And I actually had a conversation with somebody earlier today where I was her first conversation in hybrid publishing. And I was like, I love that we're like vibing really well right now. But I do think, and I sent her the 9 questions to ask. I'm like, I do think talking to other people is going to make sense, because then at least you know what you're comparing to or what you're missing out with one or what you're gaining with another. It just gives you a more robust way to kind of look at this, because, and especially with, with ghostwriting and publishing, they're not inexpensive endeavors. And so if you're making an investment, you want to make sure that you're making the right investment for you.
So, Jen, we named a number of different things here. Like, so I just want to call out for people that the 9 questions to ask a publisher, that resource, that is already linked in the show notes for folks to grab. And then I've got a blog post called Power of First Impressions, Work with a Human Who Cares About Your Book. And that's some recommendations on choosing a book coach with integrity. So those resources are both linked in the show notes. And we've got a couple of other resources also linked, but I'll save those till the very end for our shameless self-promotion section. Before we wrap up though, we want to do something a little fun, something that's not so serious, and basically highlight like, what are we reading? What's on the nightstand right now for each of us, right? Because as publishers and authors, and also publishers and authors and coaches and ghostwriters, whatever the hell we are, we're also readers, right? So Jen, what are you reading right now?
So I'm a big fan of just comedians, and I love comedians that are lesser known. And then, suddenly they're on, what's her face? I'm not going to go down that path. The one who just got the late night, Taylor Tomlinson, been following her for Lord knows how many years. And now I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, now she's mainstream. So I like the lesser known ones, but Fern Brady, who I think might be a little bit more than lesser known at this point. She's a Scottish comedian who I love, just came out with a book called Strong Female Character. And she's hilarious, but it's talking about her lack of an autism diagnosis until she was like in her 40s, and like all of like the struggles that she's had, but her delivery is perfection. And so I am enjoying it thoroughly right now. So that's my
Amazing.
list.
Amazing. So Dorcas asked, where are the show notes located? So I believe the show notes are in the original event description on LinkedIn. So everything should be linked there. And then on YouTube, they would be like underneath the video, right? Where you're going to see like a small caption, then it should say show more. It'll drop down and should give you all of the links there.
I feel like pretty much wherever we're talking and on video, it should be like directly below us.
Oh, okay.
In theory, if that is not the case, please let us know and we'll modify for next time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Dorcas, like, just tag us in a comment if you can't find what we're putting out there. So I am reading a novel by Safriana Luna, who is one of my new connections. This just came out right before the end of the year. Bumblebees and White Balloons, a novel about navigating grief and growth. And it's entirely focused on a queer couple, which is just wonderful. It's beautiful. It's beautifully written. I'm only like 83 pages in out of 300 something. And it's gorgeously done. It's gorgeously designed. And I'm really enjoying it. It's such a nice break from nonfiction, which is what I typically read.
Do you have preferences? I'm just going to ask this random question. Like for me, I like listening to memoirs. I like fiction on a Kindle, and I like nonfiction in a physical book. I feel like that just seems like I'm hitting up all the areas. I'm curious if you're like as eclectic as I, perhaps.
I am give me the paper all the way. I get so distracted by audiobooks. It's like I'm paying attention, and then it's like my creative mind just leaves, and I'm like not even. And then I've missed very serious and very important plot points, or content anchors, and so it's like no. And by staring at the screen all day, I don't read any books on Kindle or digital format. A lot of the times when I buy a Kindle book, I'm doing it to support somebody who's running their bestseller campaign or something. And I'm like, sure, I'll spend $1.99. Never going to look at that e-version. So let me know when the paperback's available. So Esther says, while you're live, I can't see the description, but hopefully it will be visible after. It should be. Esther, also tag us in the comments if something's awry.
We're here.
We'll figure out how to get you everything you need and make sure that next time those things are more visible. So to wrap up today, let's do our new segment, shameless self-promotion, and then let people know when we're back next time. So Jen, shameless author plug, you go.
Yes, I love nothing more than a shameless self-promotion. And again, we're being honest. We're just being transparent with it. This is what we're doing. So I have a workshop coming up. Actually, I think you also have a workshop coming up, don't you? Maybe that's what you're going to promote. All right, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. January 29th. January 29th, I have a 5-day workshop that is from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday that week. And it is the Publisher Purpose Author Lab. It should be linked in here somewhere, I assume. If not, you can type in Publisher Purpose Author Lab, go to our website. It is a 5-day workshop to help you just set the right foundation for getting your book done. So it goes through kind of goal setting, identifying how many words should you be writing for, how to create a writing structure and a routine that works for you. And that is 100% free workshop. It's also on Eventbrite, and it'll be done through Zoom this time. Typically, I do it live on Facebook and YouTube. And this time I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it on Zoom. And as of this morning, I had 170 registrants. So we have a big crowd for this first one of the new year. So I'm very excited, but I would love to see your face on Zoom with me.
That's awesome. Now, did a lot of those people come through Eventbrite? Tell me, as a business owner, I want to know. I just started using Eventbrite like a week ago.
You know what? Here's the thing. So again, I used to do it on Facebook and YouTube, and it was on LinkedIn. No, it wasn't on LinkedIn. It was just Facebook and YouTube, and it required people to come and participate live, but I didn't get to see them. And I've run this at least 4 times, and I was going to Eventbrite, and I'm like, oh, let me go to Eventbrite and like try promoting it there because I don't usually. I promote our in-person events on Eventbrite, but never our online events. And so I went and it was like, connect your Zoom account. I was like, oh, I should connect my Zoom account. I didn't even think to connect my Zoom account. And so that's when I was like, well, now I'm going to do it on Zoom. Yeah, you can totally do that, FYI. And so when I did that, I was like, oh, let me explore promoting it. So they have Eventbrite ads that you can do. I've never done them before. And so I just am playing around with it. And you can only target like different countries. So I can only target US, not like specific areas, but that's fine. And yeah, I would say probably 100 of them are from Eventbrite. So it's working so far. So I highly, to me, I'm all about just testing things and seeing if they work.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's why I decided to do in-person series. I decided to try Eventbrite and then Meetup. I created accounts in both just to, again, to test things out because digital stuff wasn't necessarily working last year. And I was like, what the heck? Like, you're never going to know unless you try. Folks, really what's happening here is, even though you're seeing this conversation about how we're marketing, what we want you to do is we want you to look at this through the lens of being an author. Okay. Because really, Jen and I, while we have businesses that provide publishing services to other authors, we are also authors ourselves. And so everything from a business perspective or as an author, you need to treat your book like a business anyway. You need to get yourself out there. You need to be having experiences where people can get to know you, where your audience can find you. Like, so anytime that we are just going off and you think this has nothing to do with you or what the show is about, think again, right? Like, everything that we talk about, even as business owners, can be looked through the lens of an author who needs to promote their book, just the way a business owner needs to promote their services. So, we're talking about workshops, we're talking about Eventbrite, we're talking about Meetup, we're talking about tools that you can really be thinking about and leveraging on your own, for your own books and your own success. So, Dorcas, we appreciate that you appreciate the encouragement towards collaboration and finding a new way to say the thing. You rock, Dorcas, and Esther, for being here. Okay, I guess it's time for my shameless self-promotion.
Sure is. Let's hear it.
So the book that I was referring to earlier, the one that I was writing the same time Jen was writing hers, is due out next month. It's called Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. And I couldn't be more serious about that. So that's coming out in another month. And I believe that shortly on the heels of that coming out, my co-author and I might be running a program that takes people through the book and helps them actually get their like blueprint or outline created, using some of the tips and tricks from the book itself to get going this year. And I've got something coming up in March, I think, which I'll promote the next time. Not a book, but more of a workshop type thing. So when are we going to be live next time, Jen? Let the public know.
The public can hear that February 15th, which I believe is a Thursday, because our goal is to be doing these on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So that should be a Thursday, February 15th. So that is an entire month. So if you happen to stumble across this video and it is well past February or it's before February and you want to ask a question for us to address in the next live, please, by all means, do that. As Ally said before, if you have a question, just tag us. If you're looking for a resource, can't find it, tag us. But if you have a question you want us to talk about in live in real time, I love the kind of Q&A format because it's always interesting, because I feel like we kind of have a general sense of what the most common things are that people are needing to know. But then, sometimes we're thrown off and people surprise us, and then we can just go rogue, which is my best way of communicating, is going rogue.
And I think right now we're slated, our topic for February, in case anybody wants that sneak peek, is intention and alignment in writing and publishing your book. All right. So I know that you're all like, oh, today it was integrity and transparency. Next time it's intention and alignment. Are we going to get anything practical? These things are more practical than they might sound. So while you might think this is the softer side of writing and publishing, we assure you that it's very important and super critical. Between now and then, we want you to follow us. We want you to connect with us. So please, please, please make sure that when you're locating those notes with the links, that you're connecting with Jen and myself through LinkedIn or coming to our websites. Actually, Jen, do we have the ticker of our websites?
We sure do. I'm glad that there's two of us, since one of our brains isn't functioning.
So please come on over to each of our websites, sign up for our email lists, connect with us on LinkedIn, YouTube, send us a note, let us know what you thought, or if you have any other questions. And of course, if you can't find the things that we've referred to in today's show. Before we wrap up, Dorcas has one other question. They're only seeing the fee-based program on the website. Where is the link for the free workshop?
I did drop it in, but for some reason it is only going to the YouTube destination and not LinkedIn. It is publishyourpurpose.com/author-lab. That is
right.
the way to get to it. There's like a little, they call it a hamburger menu in web developers. It's like a little bar on the right side that's got like 3 little dots. If you click on that, it should be right there in the side. And that has a link directly to Zoom so you can register.
All right. Pardon my shocked expression. The cat just dove towards the sliding glass door after 2 pigeons on the other side. And so I think that might be that we're at time and that my household's about to implode on itself.
The
So
feline
we'll
companions
wrap up.
have spoken.
They're starting to wreak havoc. So we're going to wrap up here. Really appreciate Dorcas and Esther you being with us today. Folks, we hope that you're going to catch the replay, and we can't wait to see you next time for another fabulous episode of Unscripted with Ally and Jenn.
Well said. Thank you.